Last night, I drove a car. Not knowing how to drive, not owning a car. I drove and knocked down people I loved. I went 120 through one town. I stopped at Hedgeville, and I slept in the back seat, excited about my new life.
So what's this poem about, Katie? Well, if you just look at it from the words, it's about a guy who last night went out and he drove a car. And he very obviously didn't own the car, and he didn't know how to drive. Either he doesn't have a license or, for some reason, couldn't seem to fathom how to do it. And then he starts to drive and feels the exhilaration and feels the weight of the gas pedal on his foot and feels that it can go farther and farther, and he keeps pushing it farther and farther until he's running away from his old life, and he finds, once he's gotten to a random small town in West Virginia, that he started a new life for himself. Metaphorically, this poem, well, it was written by what's called a beat poet. And not only are they all about metaphors, but they're all about drugs. What I'm thinking is the inability to drive a car could have been in relation to any of the number of drugs that Gregory Corso and his beat poet friends, like Allen Ginsberg and Ken Roxworth, used to like to do together. Rexworth, excuse me. Metaphors include the way you might knock someone down and hurt them just by leaving. The way that when you were there and you loved someone, and then suddenly acted selfishly but kind of found a new freedom in yourself, you hurt the ones you love, but you gotta love yourself first. I mean, there's also the metaphor of not knowing how to drive a car, and it's talking about the beat poet movement itself. I mean, you already know that the beat poets were trying to take poetry out of academia, take it out of the hands of the podiums and the scholars, and put it back in the, common, eclectic lifestyle of everyone who could write a poem, read a poem, be a poem. And by doing that, they were changing the rules. The rules were always that there was an academic way to do a poem, and so not knowing how to write a poem is kind of like not knowing how to drive a car. You're both starting a new life, and you're starting a new way of poetry, and it's exciting, and it's refreshing. And sometimes, again, you crash, and sometimes a poem doesn't go well, and sometimes a poem starts a whole slew of lawsuits like Howl, and it still brings fame. And so I think even though there is destruction in this poem, it kind of shows the rebirth of things, because from the beat poet movement, poetry has changed forever. Hedgeville is whenever you're ready.
So what's the importance of Hedgeville?
Hedgeville. Alright, so that's where he stops after this reckless drive where he's gone 120 miles through one town, and he's full of adrenaline and he's full of adventure, and he gets there and he finds he needs to stop. And when he stops, it's in Hedgeville, West Virginia. You know what happens in Hedgeville, West Virginia? Because I don't either. They choose the town, by they I mean Gregory Corso, chooses the town Hedgeville for a very specific reason. Hedgeville, West Virginia is nowhere. I looked it up, nothing happens there. They say that this reckless driving, this reckless life-changing selfless choice to be exactly who he wants to be and do exactly what he wants to do, irregardless of anybody else, lands him in Hedgeville. And be cool. Ooh. Dun, 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 dun. Say it ain't so. My love is a heartbreaker. Say it ain't so. My love is a life taker. Say I write to inspire this silence you've cleaned
found Jesus. Things are good, or so I hear. This bottle of Stevens